Hello, I'm Ellie for Edu for Java, and this is tutorial number 6 of Java Web Programming. In this tutorial, we're going to have a look at Java Server Pages. This is the first tutorial of a series of tutorials where we will see JSPs and the related technologies. What is a Java Server Page? We're going to see it with an example. Here we have the code of a JSP called login JSP. This is the code here. What is a JSP? It's a document with HTML tags here and GCP tags. These are tags which are going to be interpreted in the side of the server. The only JSP tag in this code is this one here. These tags allows us to write Java code inside the page. How does it work? When somebody calls this page, the JSP basically, whenever it finds HTML, it sends it directly to the client. And when it finds Java code, it starts to execute it. This JSP is going to do the same as this servlet here. It's the same servlet we worked with before. Well, I've added some things here to be exactly the same, but basically it's the same. Do you remember what it did? The do post here receive the request and response objects. The request got parameters, user, and password. These were the user and password we had sent him, and if the user was edu for Java and the password was Eli for Java, he called the method response, this method here, which was going to get a writer and painted all the page. This we sent him as a parameter a message, this one here, that if the user and password matched, was login okay, and if not, it was invalid login, and it was painted in the middle of our page. Then why a JSP? As you can see, this JSP is a lot easier than this servlet here. Separating HTML from the Java code is a lot easier than all this together. This makes life a lot easier to the people who design web pages, which only work with the HTML part. Even for a developer, it's a lot easier when you have a lot of HTML code. Let's take a look at the Java code. In the JSP, this is the Java code in the JSP. When I obtain the user, I get it from a request object. But where does this object come from? In a JSP, there is no object request defined, neither the out object. These two variables, user and out, are known as implicit objects. There are objects given by the JSP so that we work with them. It gives us a request and response, which we use to get the user and the password. We also have the object out, which allows us to paint. It's a writer as the one we obtain in our servlet here with getWriter. The JSP gives us an object with a writer so that we don't have to get the writer through the request. Other very used objects are session and application. The objects request, session, and application are scope objects, and they allow us to save information. We will look at them in detail in future tutorials. Okay, let's continue. Let's try our JSP. We are going to copy the login JSP into our Eclipse, into our web content, new JSP file. We're going to call it login, finish, and we're going to paste our code. Ctrl S to save. Once we have copied the code, we have to modify our login HTML so that it calls the login JSP. Instead of calling the login, which was the servlet, we write login.jsp. Ctrl S. Okay, right button on the login HTML. Run on server. Finish. Here we are, those ready to go. We send, and here we have invalid login. We can see that the login JSP is the one who has answered, not the servlet. The functionality is the same, but it is the JSP instead of the servlet. It is important to say that the JSP don't need to be declared in the web XML. Remember that. How does a JSP work in the server? The servlet container works with servlets, and the JSP, how do they work? Magic? No. The server generates from the JSP .java, a servlet. The servlet then is compiled in a .class, and then everything works as always. The trick is that the server can convert a JSP into a servlet. For this, we can go to this directory here. This can change from one installation to another. In my installation, it's this one. And here we can see a login.class and a .java. Let's copy the Java file into Eclipse to have a look. If we have an error, we move it to the correct package. Okay, let's take a look at it. We can see in the method JSP service, we can see that this method receives a request and a response. This method is the one which replaces the doGets and the doPosts. This code is all generated. Here in the out.write, we have all the HTML we wrote even with the carriage return. Let's see what the page tells us about this. Here at the end we've got some observations. One important thing is that the HTTP JSP base extends from HTTP servlets. Here at the beginning we can see, if we do Ctrl-T, the inheritance. The class login JSP extends from HTTP JSP base, and this one from servlet. It's a servlet. We can also see what we've said already, that the method JSP service replaces doPost and doGet. The third point, it talks about the implicit objects, request, response. Here in the JSP service, we can see the request and the response, and here the out, which we use to paint the page. The out is defined here, and here we can see where do we get it from. Get out, and we keep it in a variable out. And lastly, how is our code sent through the out.write? If you remember before, we used the out.println. Now we use the out.write to send all the HTML to our page. In the future, we will see more about JSP, but now we're going to see about debugging, because to be able to see how things work, it is interesting to be able to debug. So the next tutorial is about debugging. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!